Hare Krishna. It's as if we never left, right? I'm so happy to see you all and to be back home. Thank you for keeping the vibration going. Hare Krishna. This is weird. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Vilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Dena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadahmayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kolpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindobhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Go Premanande Hari Hari Vo. Is Anshu? He has my drum somewhere. Oh, here it is. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Dashodanandana Vraja Janarandana Dashodanandana Vraja Janarandana Jashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Jashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivaradhari. Lift it up. Lift. This. Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Jashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Junatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai go Haribo, 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 Nitai go Haribo. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Premanande. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Privrajaka Jaisto Tarashat Shishima Abhay Charanada Vinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Privrajaka Jaisto Tarashat Shishima Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur. Prem Sikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Garadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gokupinath Shyamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapurna Vidip Dham Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Jamuna Devi Ganga Devi Ki Jai. Swami Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande Haribo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Jaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, text, Chapter 3, The Birth of Lord Krishna. And right now we're on text number 21. Mm-hmm. 10.3.21. Masya lokasya vibho rikshishur grihe vatirno si mama kileshvara rajanya samgya surakoti yutpahar Rajanya Samgya Sura Koti Yutapar Nirvyu Hamana Nihanishya Sechamu Tvamasya Lokasya Vibho Ririkshishur Grihe Vatirno si mama kileshvara Rajanya Samgya Surakoti Yutapar Nirvyu Hamana Niyam Nisha Sechamu. Someone? Tvamasya lokasya vibho ririkshishur grihe vatirno si mama kileshvara Rajanya Samgya Surakoti Utapar Nirvyu Yamana Nihanishya Sechamu Tamasya Lokasya Viboririkshishur Grihe Vatirno Simamakileshvara Rajanya Samgya Surakoti Utapar Nirvyu Yamana Nihamishya Sechamu
Lokasya vibhorirakshishur
Tamasya Lokasya Viboririkshishur
Grihe vatirno simamakhileshvara
Grihe Vatirno Simamakileshvara
Rajanya samnya surakoti yutapar
Rajanya Samgya Surakoti Utapar
Nirvyuhyamana nihanishyase chamu
Nirvyu Yamana Niyanishya Sechamu No counting without mic.
Tamasya lokasya vibhorirakshishur
Tamasya Lokasya Viboririkshishur
Grihe vatirno simamakhileshvara
Grihe Vatirno Simamakileshvara
Rajanya sanya surakoti utapar
Rajanya Samgya Surakoti Utapar
Nirvyuhyamana nihanishyase chamu
Nirvyu Yamana Niyanishya Sechamu
Tvamasya lokasya vibhorirakshishur
Tamasya Lokasya Viboririkshishur
Grihe vatirno simamakhileshvara
Grihe Vatirno Simamakileshvara
Rajanya samnya surakoti utthape
Rajanya Samgya Surakoti Utapar
Nirvyuhyamana nihanishyase chamu
Nirvyu Yamana Niyanishya Sechamu
Tamasya lokasya vibhorirakshishur
Tamasya Lokasya Viboririkshishur
Grihe vatirno simamakhileshvara
Grihe Vatirno Simamakileshvara
Rajanya samna surakotirutaper
Rajanya Samgya Surakoti Utapar
Nirvyuhamana nihanishya shechamuh
Nirvyu Yamana Niyanishya Sechamu
Tamasya lokasya vibhorirakshishur
Tamasya Lokasya Viboririkshishur
Grahe vatirno simamakhileshvara
Grihe Vatirno Simamakileshvara
Rajanya samnya surakoti uttaper
Rajanya Samgya Surakoti Utapar
Nirvyuhamana nihanisya sekramu
Nirvyu Yamana Niyanishya Sechamu Word for word. Tvam, your lordship, asya, of this world. So this is Vasudev speaking to Krishna. He's just appeared and he's offering his prayers to the Lord spontaneously as he's seen him appear in this prison home. So because we're approaching the appearance day of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we hear some of the feelings that come out from the devotees during the time that the Lord advents himself and the conditions under which he advents himself. And we'll find that they're not just similar but synonymous. When the Lord appears, there's a similar pattern That is, someone calls for him. He already knows the need, but when the devotees call, then he assembles a team that comes. He says demigods. In this case, Lord Brahma had gone on behalf of all the demigods, and Mother Bhumi was feeling overburdened by the unnecessary defense force of so-called kings. They had become demoniac, actually. When the leadership becomes demoniac, then there's a burden on everyone. And Krishna's, one of his main duties is to restore the leadership so that people can live in such a way that they can harmoniously cultivate Krishna consciousness and go back to Godhead. But it's the nature of the material world. It's enervating. The energy is gradually pulled in one direction or another, and because of the influence of the time element and the three modes of material nature, things become misconstrued. So he comes to set that right. When the demigods and Brahma went to the shore of the ocean of milk, they prayed. Or did Brahma made his prayers in the form of the Purusha Sukta, which sounds something like this. If you'll give the microphone to Priya Kishori, she'll sing the first 3 shlokas of the Purusha Sukta. Is this a good key, or you want it up or down?
A little down. Sahasrashirša Purushah Sahasrakshas Sahasrapat Sabhumim Vishvato Vritva Atyatishtat Dashangulam Purusha Evedagum Sarvam Yadbhutam Yaccha Bhavyam Utamritatvasyešanah Yadannenatirohati Etavanasya Mahima Atodhyayagmischa Purushah Padosyeha Bhavat Punah.
Hare Krishna. Clap, clap. And with the transmission of this prayer, the Lord spoke to Brahma in his heart. And Brahma then relayed the message to the demigods. Now, one of the messages was that all of the devas should take birth and around the land of Braja to assist the Lord in his pastimes. Prabhupada points out in the Krishna book that this is called Tat Priyartam. The way the king, when you say king, you don't think of just the king alone. If you said the president, there goes the president, you wouldn't expect that it was just the president walking down from 7-Eleven, but you'd expect to see a motorcade and helicopters and all kinds of others that accompany the king, all his energies as well. So when the Lord goes anywhere, he takes all his energies with him. He takes all his intimate associates, his paraphernalia. I mean, even when we leave home, we take a few essential things with us because we can't do without them. They're part of our atmosphere that help us to function. Of course, the Lord doesn't need anything or anyone to help him function, but the Lord means the Lord and his energies and everything that goes with him. So this is his intention when he comes to this world, is to engage many of the souls. They're called devas, but actually deva means generally someone who is advanced in Krishna consciousness. And we know from the Bhagavad Gita that when one takes to the practice of Krishna consciousness and is not successful in this lifetime, either after a short time or a long time, that person then takes birth in a heavenly planet. True? Okay, please prove it. As quick as you can. Proof. Bhagavad Gita, which chapter? 6th chapter. And which verse is? Somebody please relieve us of our pain. 6th chapter. It's important to know the process of going back to Godhead. Oftentimes one thinks that it's a sentimental process. Simply I joined some religion, so therefore when I die, I'll go to heaven. They said that about one of my relatives when I went to the funeral, and I was thinking, she's not going. With all due respect. Okay, 641, please. We're getting there. Prapya punya kritam lokan ushitva shashvati sama suchinam shrimatam gehe yoga brashto bijayate. Someone else?
Prapya punya kritam lokan
Prapya punya kritam lokan
ushitva shashvati sama
ushitva shashvati sama
shuchinam shrimatam gehe
shutinam shrimatam gehe
yoga brashto bijayate.
yoga brashto bijayate. A few more.
Prapya punya kritam lokan
Prapya punya kritam lokan
Yushiva shashvati sama
ushitva shashvati sama
Suchinan shrimatam gehe
shuchinam shrimatam gehe
Yoga brasto bijayate.
yoga brashto bijayate. Prapya punya kritam lokan ushitva shashvati sama
Suchinam Shrimatam Gehe
shutinam shrimatam gehe
Yoga Brashto Bijayate.
yoga brashto bijayate. Synonyms: prapya, after achieving, punya kritam, of those who performed pious activities, lokan, planets, ushitva, after dwelling, shashvati, many, sama, years, shuchinam, of the pious, shrimatam, of the prosperous, gehe, in the house, yoga brashta, one who has fallen from the path of self-realization, abhijayate, takes his birth. Translation: the unsuccessful yogi, after many, many years of enjoyment on the planets of the pious living entities, is born into a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocracy. Purport: the unsuccessful yogis are divided into two classes. One is fallen after very little progress, and one is fallen after long practice of yoga. The yogi who falls after a short period of practice goes to the higher planets, where pious living entities are allowed to enter. After prolonged life there, one is sent back again to this planet to take birth in the family of righteous Brahmana Vaishnav, or of aristocratic merchants. The real purpose of yoga practice is to achieve the highest perfection of Krishna consciousness, as explained in the last verse of this chapter. But those who do not persevere to such an extent and who fail because of material allurements are allowed by the grace of the Lord to make full utilization of their material propensities. I just want to know what you think of that last statement. Yes.
That's scary.
What's scary? What is scary? And first of all, what is scary and what is scary about it?
Going to, we know that even the demigods they usually want to come to the Earth planet to be, to live a short life and have a quick go back to Godhead. Now we're trying hard, and then if we get allured by the material world around us, then we again send to enjoy more in the upper planetary systems. And the scary part is we might just be so involved in it and just totally forget Krishna again, and again fall into the birth and death. So it's better to go the fast track and finish it and go back home, back to Godhead.
Thank you for the perspective. This is I'd like to comment on that. Earlier in this canto, we hear in the first chapter that Devaki was constantly fearful of Kamsa. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, as presented by Srila Prabhupada in his purports, has said that this kind of fear that Devaki had of Kamsa is necessary for those who are interested in going back to Godhead. Fear of material existence. This burns up Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, and Matsarya. These are 6 enemies of those who are pure souls who have fallen into the material world. They're overcome by lust, anger, greed, envy, and so forth. And the fear that one has of these qualities and of the material world itself, coming to know that if I accidentally fall into the material world again, there are repercussions, and therefore devotee is characterized by being cautious. In fact, we just read, before I left Mayapur, in one of the purports, that a devotee should always be cautious and sagacious. Shraddha? Sagacious, please. What? Wise. Yeah. It means wise. Doesn't it have that word in the context of the way we use the word sage, and therefore we say sagacious? You know, it is wise, but it seems it deserves a little more description. You know what I mean?
So it means having or showing keen mental discernment and good judgment.
Keen mental discernment and good judgment.
Shrewd.
So
it's the origin is...
You have to be shrewd when dealing with the material nature, that's for sure. Because there's a way in which Bharat Maharaj wasn't exactly shrewd when he dealt with the deer. And off we get this question, well, what were you going to do with a deer? So the answer is you should be shrewd and figure out another solution. He could have called the Humane Society or something, but not becoming involved. And so cautious and sagacious means wise, and a strong discernment of intelligence. Bali Mardan Prabhu needs a microphone fast, or he's going to he'll start swinging.
Hare Krishna. Welcome back, Prabhuji.
Thank you so much.
Glad to see you. So I was just also remembering last Wednesday I was giving one insight, what Prabhupada says in one of his lecture, that a devotee who is chanting sincerely and having material desires, then they will be allowed to stay in heavenly planet for 60,000 years.
So why do you bring that up? In what context? Because I notice you have a kind of a smile on your face, so that means something. What do you mean by that?
So I was just in connection with Sukhesri Mataji's point that how demigods want to come back to the material world, and we are reading this verse here.
So there's quite a detour is what you're saying.
Yeah.
60,000 years.
Again means maybe some of us may be coming from the demigod's place, heavenly planet.
Yes.
And again, we are desiring to enjoy the material one, so we go back to there. So better to be cautious and be shrewd.
Yeah. It's kind of fortunate, though, to be born in Kali Yuga. There's not a lot left to enjoy here. And it's one of the benefits of this age is to see actually that things are kind of already done with here. There's nothing to see. In fact, my favorite sign in Mayapur, there's signs all over India. Maybe it's my favorite sign in India. When we go to see Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's samadhi, and we're walking down the pathway, there's a little building to the side that you might be enticed to go into because there's a pathway that goes into it. But there's a sign outside that says there's nothing to visit here. And I always felt that's an appropriate sign to put on the material world. And this is one of the ways in which I was just listening yesterday to Prabhupada, where he is saying that in order to be successful in spiritual life, one must categorically understand that there's nothing here for me in the material world at all. Categorically. Can you look up categorically, please? Because there's a resolution that I've come to through knowledge and experience that the material world categorically means
in a way that is unambiguously explicit and direct.
One more time, that's so nice.
In a way that is unambiguously explicit and direct.
Unambiguously explicit and direct. Our understanding has to be categorical, that there's nothing for me in the material world. Otherwise, Krishna says, Vyavasayatmika buddhi ekeha kuranandana bahu shaka hyanantashta buddhayo vyavasahinam. He explains in the Bhagavad Gita in many different ways that the material world is not a place that a wise person, a sagacious person, gets involved with. And if one doesn't have this resolute determination that the material world is categorically undesirable for me, then bahu shaka hiya anantascha, then you'll have to deal with the unlimited branches of material desires that really, as Prahlad Maharaj explains in the Srimad Bhagavatam, are punak punas charvita charvananam. As the Prabhupada was explaining graphically also about how in the material world the attraction mainly is between men and women. And that then this is the highest happiness in the material world. And then there's a way in which through different combinations and permutations, the mind tries to enjoy that kind of association, and therefore there are unlimited scenarios under which men try to observe women and women trying to observe men, and I won't go into a lot of details, but it's the same thing over and over again, but just repackaged in different ways. Prabhupada said, you've seen it before, and it's not satisfying, but still you go after it again and again. And categorically means one understands that there are different energies, and I made a wrong turn. Here in the material world, I'm engaged in a way that's futile for my satisfaction. And one who comes to perceive this and makes a resolution internally that no mas, I'm not interested anymore in the material world. And even if the senses are, even if the mind is, the intellect has become fortified. Evam buddhi param buddva samstabhyatmanamatmana jahi shatram mahabaho kamarupam durashadam. One must overcome kama, or the desire to enjoy the material world in any of its subtle forms, or gross, is able to do so by fortifying the intelligence, the buddhi, which becomes the parent in the room, who then informs the childlike mind that this is not something that you want to put in your mouth. Yes.
So Maharaj, I was just to this point, I was thinking how Krishna is...
Hold that down below your mouth.
How there. Krishna is more acting as a facilitator. If you want to enjoy, okay, can get back. If you want to do better, go there. But ultimately, he's giving a facility. Even we try something good and then fall back. He said, okay, you still have a propensity, go there and enjoy.
Thank you for bringing that up. It is one of Krishna's qualities that he offers free choice to every living entity. Not only does he offer free choice, but he gives practically unlimited choice, so that later you can't come back and say, you didn't give me enough choice.
Yes, Maharaj, and then also to your point about there's nothing more to enjoy in this Kali Yuga, I just somehow fortunately read the same thing today morning when in Srimad Bhagavatam in the 11th canto, when Lord Krishna is instructing Uddhava, he mentioned actually two of these verses. My dear Uddhava, you should not remain here on the earth. Once I have abandoned this place, my dear devotees who are sinless, but in Kali Yuga the people will be addicted to all type of sinful activities, therefore do not stay here. And then the next one he said that, do not stay here. And I think the first one was more, O saintly Uddhava, in the near future I will abandon this earth, then being overwhelmed with the age of Kali, the earth will be bereft of the pieties. So it's
Yes.
kind of going
And
to...
actually in that 11th canto, it is mentioned by the acharyas that because people want to enjoy sinful life at some point, Krishna arranges a whole age where you can feel free to observe all the different kinds of depravity that one falls into through sinful life. And you get full experience. Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Welcome back. Good
Thank
to
you.
have you. I mean, it feels like our life is back actually.
Kochira Koso.
So I was remembering one thing that Vijay Damodar Prabhu usually says when he's giving out Bhagavatam or to new people. He mentions that when Sukeshwari Mataji was saying it is scary, I was connecting to what he was saying. He says, right now we have 10,000 years of Kali Yuga, which is a golden period, which is an exception to what Prabhuji was mentioning. So 60,000 years, if we are in higher planetary systems, we miss this golden opportunity of these 10,000 years of Kali Yuga, where we have access to the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, you missed the whole thing by 50,000 years. You have part of success means being in the right place at the right time, and this is an important calculation to make. Yeah. Okay, so we had been reading from the purport and making some remarks about the statement, but those who do not persevere to such an extent and who fail because of material allurements are allowed by the grace of the Lord to make full utilization of their material propensities. And because of Sukeshwari's lead, I mean the way she was thinking about that sentence, then we entered into this sequence of thoughts. Then we have, and after that, they are given opportunities to live prosperous lives in righteous or aristocratic families. Those who are born in such families may take advantage of the facilities and try to elevate themselves in Krishna consciousness. One thing Srila Prabhupada used to say when devotees were trying to make life decisions is, what is the guarantee? He would urge, take to Krishna consciousness as directly as possible. Of course, everyone has to adjust according to their psychophysiological nature, but as much as possible stay connected to the direct process of Krishna consciousness, because Prabhupada would say, what is the guarantee? You might try to make some material adjustment and then it could go haywire at any time. Possible? I was expecting a little more emphatic. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Did I finish the purport or is there more here? It's done? Okay, so the next verse says, Atava yoginam eva kule bhavati di matam etadhi dulabha taram loke janma yaridrisham. Couple who haven't gone yet? Anyone who hasn't chanted anything yet today?
Athava yoginameva kule bhavati dhimatam etadhi durlabhataram loke janma yad idrisham.
Atava yoginameva
kule bhavati dhimatam etadhi durlabhataram loke janma yadidrisham.
Atava yoginameva
Kuli bhavati dimata
kule bhavati dhimatam
etadi
durlabhataram
loke janma yad
idrisham. Word for word. Atava, or yoginam, of learned transcendentalists. Eva, certainly. Kule, in the family. Bhavati, takes birth. Dhimatam, of those who are endowed with great wisdom. Etat. This. He, certainly, durlabhataram, very rare, loke, in this world, janma, birth, yat, that which, idrasham, like this. Translation. Or, if unsuccessful after long practice of yoga, he takes his birth in a family of transcendentalists who are surely great in wisdom. Certainly such a birth is rare in this world. Take note, if you had been born into a family of transcendentalists, that your birth is rare. Purport: birth in a family of yogis or transcendentalists, those with great wisdom, is praised herein because the child born in such a family receives a spiritual impetus from the very beginning of his life. It is especially the case in the Acharya or Goswami families. Such families are very learned and devoted by tradition and training, and thus they become spiritual masters. In India, there are many such Acharya families, but they have now degenerated due to insufficient education and training. By the grace of the Lord, there are still families that foster transcendentalists generation after generation. It is certainly very fortunate to take birth in such families. Fortunately, both our spiritual master, Om Vishnupad Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, and our humble self had the opportunity to take birth in such families by the grace of the Lord, and both of us were trained in the devotional service of the Lord from the very beginning of our lives. Later on, we met by the order of the transcendental system. Is there anybody here whose first remembrances in life were becoming trained in Krishna consciousness? The first thing that you remember when you were a child? Anyone? Anyone? They're just being humble, I guess. Okay. Yes? Anyone else? Well, this is a great opportunity and Krishna's saying here that it's not an accident. Anywhere that you're born is, according to Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, Purusha prakritisto hi bhunkte prakriti jan gunan karanam guna sangosya sarasad yoni janmasu. This is a result of previous association, and because of that, we're custom fit into a particular body and in a particular family. Does anyone want to give reference from the Bhagavad Gita to a verse that very specifically says we get a custom-made body, senses specifically made according to our past life? Yes. Reference the number will be 75% credit.
1322, I believe.
1322? That may have been the verse I just quoted. Purusha prakritisto hi. Let's look at it. Bhunkte prakriti jangunam karanam guna sangosya sarasad yoni janmasu. And the translation is, the living entity in the material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among various species. Purport: This verse is very important for an understanding of how the living entities transmigrate from one body to another. It is explained in the second chapter that the living entity is transmigrating from one body to another, just as one changes dress. This change of dress is due to his attachment to material existence. As long as he is captivated by this false manifestation, he has to continue transmigrating from one body to another. Due to his desire to lord it over material nature, he is put into such undesirable circumstances. Under the influence of material desire, the entity is born sometimes as a demigod, sometimes as a man, sometimes as a beast, as a bird, as a worm, as an aquatic, as a saintly man, as a bug. This is going on, and in all cases the living entity thinks himself to be the master of his circumstances, yet he is under the influence of material nature. Is scary? Skeshri. Okay, yeah. Malini has a comment
Yeah, I was thinking of another verse.
Okay, state it, and we'll finish the purport, and then we'll go look it up. Go ahead.
15:8.
Yeah.
Shariram yadavapnoti yachap utkramatishvaraha grihitvaitani
Not yet.
samyati vayurgandhani vashi.
Don't go there yet. We'll just keep it as a note. Don't go there yet. That's the one I was thinking of. Thank you. We'll come right back to it. Now he is put into such, how he is put into such different bodies is explained here. It is due to association with the different modes of nature. Is this something they teach in high school? Is it? I'm just curious. Anything even resembling this? Maybe they teach it in science class? Anything? Okay, give her the mic. We're going to find out what they're saying in high school.
They say that, in biology class, in evolution, they state that we come from a common ancestor. So at once, something was created and then all of us evolved from that one thing, but they don't know how that is, but they're trying to get evidence, but yeah.
Yeah. So, some of our Krishna conscious scientists, specifically Sadaputta Prabhu, has given a series of lectures in which he's a mathematical biologist, and he explains the mathematical impossibility of evolution from a single entity into given the time period that is speculated by modern science to get to where we are now as far as the variety of forms of life. Although it's easy enough to speculate that a monkey brain in which there is similarity, we see some similarities between the primate and the human being. For instance, they have language to some degree, very primitive language. They don't have syntax. If they want a banana, they can say want, banana, banana, banana. They can't say that I would have wanted a banana last week if you had offered me one, but this week I'm not feeling well, so I won't have a banana. And it seems insignificant, but actually those who work with artificial intelligence and who know what it takes to get a machine to reproduce language know that the mathematical difficulties are immense. One may then speculate, but it's not a big deal because the monkey's brain is this big and the human brain is this big, and all it does is just change into a bigger brain. And you might then give the example of a cloud and say, well, you see a cloud, it's this big, and then all of a sudden it's this big. So what's the big deal? Big deal is that's not science, that's speculation. There's no mathematical probability that could explain a brain in its complexity growing to this size through so-called evolution, meaning through natural selection. If you want to speculate in that way, you have to show the steps. This is Sadaputta's point. You have to show what are the steps to get there, actually prove what steps you took to get there. And when it comes to that point, this is coming from the high school. They're saying, cool it. You have to be able to show the steps to get there, otherwise you're blindly speculating. And to that end, Sadaputta Prabhu goes to some examples in which he shows protozoan, some with propellers and some that don't have propellers, and then proposes a biological experiment and the mathematical probabilities of a protozoan without a propeller developing a propeller. This is a very simple example, but then he shows the mathematical improbability of it happening. It's so onerous to come to that point that one would declare it a mathematical impossibility. What to speak of a brain which is infinitely more complex, and for the primate brain to go to a human brain through natural selection, even if you give it billions, trillions of years. Meanwhile, we have other scientists. Who is our scientist who wrote about Darwin? Huh? Yeah, Judakarma Prabhu, and he points out the patchwork of inconsistencies in the scientific research and evolution, in which evidence is systematically ignored in order to prove the prominent theory that's already there. I'm not going to go into much detail there, but he has written a book called Forbidden Archaeology, which is worth reading. And there he points out that the kinds of science and scientific knowledge that's passed down to the high schools is coming through a filter of a few people who have decided on a particular theory and who guard it by warding off any other kinds of understandings of that. This is one of the ways of controlling in the material world, and therefore when the knowledge comes down through textbooks in the high schools and schools below that, we're getting refracted knowledge that is inaccurate and not very helpful for long-term understanding. Nonetheless, it pervades society, because even when you nowadays read books where people are speaking, for instance, about self-help, they'll naturally bring up a point. They'll say, well, at a certain point we were hunters-gatherers, and because of that we've developed certain propensities and so forth. It's a premise that's become well established in society. One should therefore understand scientifically, from another point of view, the possibility, or if one understands in proper perspective, the probability that the design of the universe and the various entities, the similarities we see between them, are the work of an engineer. And when someone engineers something, they use similar parts and algorithms to create other kinds of forms and entities. Like if you see a car and then an airplane, you say it has similarities, therefore the car became an airplane. Or you could understand that somebody used certain principles that worked in the car that also work in the airplane as well. And therefore it's a sign of intelligence, not of randomness. I just thought I'd say that because it's an important point that the misinformation leads to a conclusion that we're actually here by chance. And that doesn't really make any sense either, for many, many reasons. Just saying. Now where were we? We're continuing, right? With how he is put into such different bodies as explained here, it is due to association with the different modes of nature. One has to rise, therefore, above the three material modes and become situated in the transcendental position. However, this is not possible unless one is born in a high family. True or false? Are you sure? Who said yes over here? Okay, somebody prove it. We need Sanskrit.
Prabhupada,
yes.
Prabhupada transformed many people, many thousands, souls. They were not born in the righteous families.
Okay.
So
there's some anecdotal evidence. Someone has some more? Give Shastric proof that no matter what position you start from, you can be elevated. I want one from the Bhagavatam and one from the Gita, please. At least the two classic verses that Prabhupada would quote most frequently when speaking about how anyone from any position of life can be elevated to the highest position no matter what their birth is.
I'm not sure if this is a classic verse, but one that came to mind was Kirata Hunandra Pulinda.
That's a classic.
Avira Shumbhaya Vanakashadaya Yene cha Papa Yadapashaya Shaya Shuddhyanti Tasmai Prabha Vishnave Namaha.
Correct. Now please explain the verse a little bit.
So, people from the lower classes of life, which are such as the Kiratas or the Hunandras or Anda, Pulin, the very low class of life, by worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Somebody's trying to get in and they're not sure which way to go, perhaps. If someone could greet them at the door, welcome them. Other door. They've gone the other way. Thank you. Go right ahead.
By worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they can attain, I'm not sure of the exact translation, but they can, by worshipping Vishnu, they can attain to the transcendental
Yeah, it really
position.
says because of the power that Lord Vishnu has, they can become elevated by Vishnu or by his representatives because of the power that comes through Lord Vishnu. So that's one verse from the Bhagavatam. Now give a classic verse from the Bhagavad Gita, please, that proves this. Yes. This is good news, right? Otherwise, we might as well just go back to bed. Okay.
932 Maharaj.
Yes, very good. Very well done.
Mam hi parth vyapashritya yepi siupapayonaya striyo vaishyas tatha shudra tepi yanti param gati.
Expound on the verse. You don't have to give the exact translation, but tell us what Krishna is basically saying here in the context in which he's saying it.
So Krishna says that Mam hi parth vyapashritya, whoever takes shelter of me, yepi papa yona, even if they belong to papa yoni or a womb which was born because of material desires, sinful desires, even if they belong to the Striya caste or Vaishyas or Shudra caste, tepi yanti param gatim, they can reach the highest perfection, param gati.
Param gatim. They can make the highest position. This is a highly contended issue because there is a way in which we've seen it in the history of the Gaudiya Vaishnavism that some people have claimed. And of course, this is nothing new. This happens in any institution or organization around the world that people in power want to stay in power. That only certain people have the right to practice and to come to the ultimate goal, and you have to be born in the right family. That kind of helps when you're in the right family to protect your power to say that. However, it's not borne out in the Shastra. Krishna doesn't say it. It helps to be born in a family of a high court judge, but it doesn't mean you're going to become a high court judge. You could become a drunkard and live on the street. And similarly, Krishna is saying, even if you're born in a family of drunkards, and there are numerous examples given in the Srimad Bhagavatam of people who were born in low families. Give three really quick. Haridas Thakur from the Bhagavatam, Prahlad Maharaj, Jagai Madai, two more from the Bhagavatam, Vritrasura, Ajamil, Brigari the hunter. There's a lot. In fact, the Bhagavatam goes into more detail about people who were born in very unfavorable circumstances who rose to the highest levels of devotional service than it does the other way around. You said another one? Narada Muni. There you have it. So this is important to know. That is called Krishna consciousness. Unless one is situated in Krishna consciousness, his material consciousness will oblige him, note the word oblige, to transfer from one body to another because he has material desires since time immemorial. This is important. No one likes to be obliged to go to certain places. We want to be free and choose what we want to choose. Just traveling. Came back, it was 30 hours of travel yesterday or the day before. I don't even know what day it is, to be honest. And I was just noticing how obliged I was to follow so many rules. Even in the Frankfurt airport, I came through and they, I went through security, and Germans are very exacting about how you go through security. In India, it's a little different. When I came through Calcutta, I had water in my bag, and I asked the guy, can I bring this through? And he said, he indicated I should drink it. I said, I don't want to drink it. He goes, all right, just take it through. When I got to Frankfurt, I went through security. You had to do everything exactly the same way as everybody else was doing it. There was no pandemonium like there is in Calcutta. And then I got through, I went to a few places and I came back, and then I had to go through security again for the second time. And I was just noting how much I'm prodded, poked, examined. We accept it nowadays, but it's actually a drain on the system. And part of it is being obliged to walk in certain places, don't walk here, do walk there, carry this, not that. It can be this big, not that big, and so forth, as far as liquids go. And this obligation is part of the nature of the material world. We're obliged to certain kinds of things, not the least of which another body. If you consider that at the end of life, you don't get a say in it. It's decided by Daivanetrena, by higher authorities, and whatever you put in, whatever kind of cultivation you've put into yourself, into your consciousness, will determine where you go during the final exam. Okay, he's obliged. But he has to change that conception. That change can be effected only by hearing from authoritative sources. The best example is here. Arjuna is hearing the science of God from Krishna. The living entity, if he submits to this hearing process, will lose his long-cherished desire to dominate material nature, and gradually and proportionately, as he reduces his long desire to dominate, he comes to enjoy spiritual happiness. In a Vedic mantra, it is said that he becomes learned in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In a Vedic mantra, it is said that as he becomes learned in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he proportionately relishes his eternal blissful life. Isn't that nice? It's nice to know we have somewhere to go. It's not that we obliterate material life because it's categorically a place where we can't enjoy. We talked about that earlier. The material world is a place where we really can't take shelter. There's nothing here that is permanent or that offers us any actual enjoyment. But that doesn't mean there isn't enjoyment somewhere else. There is. And that is realized proportionately by hearing in association with devotees and applying the process of devotional service. And then we're going to look at Shariram Yaravapnoti Yachchap Yukramatishvara Grihit Vaitani Samyati Vayagandam Ivashaya. 15.8. This is just closing the point that we get a customized situation exactly according to our contribution in our previous life. So whatever you're doing now is developing whatever situation you'll have in the future. Does that sound accurate to you? Say yes. Yes. I didn't mean to force you, but obliged. You're obliged to say it. But it's something that we're naturally accustomed to. For instance, if you're attentive in your studies, or if you're attentive in the work that you're doing, you'll notice that you're better accommodated later on because of your contribution. So in a similar way, a lifetime is a field of preparation. And when you prepare properly, then you're offered more or less accommodation in your next life. That makes sense, doesn't it? That's the system. It's good to know. So this verse, we'll do the word for word. Sharira means the body, yat as. Avapnoti gets. Yat as, chaapi also. Ukramati gives up. Ishvara, the Lord of the bodies. That's referring to the soul, because the soul ultimately is the Lord of the body. Grihitva, taking, etani, all these. Sangyati, goes away. Vayu, the air. Gandan, smells. Iva, like ashayat, from their source. And the translation is, the living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another. As the air carries aromas, thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. Next verse. Then Shotra means ears, Chakshu means eyes, Sparshana means touch, Rasana means tongue. What does Rasana mean? What does Chakshu mean? Sparshanam, Shotram. And where do they come from? Why did you get a certain kind of ear, eye, a sense of touch, tongue, smelling power? Because of your previous Sangha. And whatever cultivation you made, then you were offered this by material nature. Put it together. You know, it's computed. And it's very detailed, what kind of situation we'll get. So that we get then adhishtaya, being situated in manat, the mind, vishayan, sense objects, upasevate. And then it's all grouped about the mind, because the mind is the little virtual reality center that allows us to take in information from the world. And incidentally, the world is a categorical energy that's categorically different from us. As Krishna says in the Gita, Bhumirapo analo vayu kamano bhutirevacha ahankara ityame bina prakriti rashtara. He names the material elements and says all these things are binna, they're separated material energy, and that there's a higher energy called the soul. Aparayam etastonyam prakritim vidime param jiva bhuta mahabaho yayedam darite jagat. It's the conscious living being who's interacting with this lower nature that's animating it, that illuminates it at all. Otherwise, it's just dead matter. Matter wouldn't matter unless there was a living entity to look at it and observe it and think there's something in it. Now, for us as spiritual souls, it's very subtle. Subtler than the gross material elements are the senses, and above the senses, the mind is more subtle. For instance, if we asked you physically to carry out all the items that are within this temple room now, what kind of a job would it be on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most difficult? 11. But if we ask you in your mind to take it all out, how difficult would it be? 0? Very easy. It's out. The mind is more subtle. The intelligence is more subtle than that, and the soul is more subtle than the intellect. And there's a way in which my interaction with the material nature is completely unsatisfying. Therefore, I need a mind to work with those material elements. And generally, we come up with all kinds of fictional stories in order to satisfy our need for more expansiveness. The material world's a small place, and it's inanimate. That's why people, when they write stories, oftentimes you'll find there's all something fantastical about them that you won't see anywhere else. Where does that come from? The mind. And it's the nature of the soul to want to see something more magical, more unlimited about material nature than it actually is. And therefore, we project these kinds of things through the mind. And it's the mind that's the medium through which we try to take in the impulses from the material nature and then savor them in various ways. And the tastes are the 3 modes of material nature. 3 flavors, that's all you get, but they're mixed together, different combinations and permutations, like Baskin-Robbins ice cream. So this is something to be aware of, that this is something that is the body that's given to us in a very scientific way. And the translation is, the living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. Purport: in other words, if the living entity adulterates his consciousness with the qualities of cats and dogs, in the next life he gets a cat or dog body and enjoys. Consciousness is originally pure, like water. But if we mix water with a certain color, it changes. Similarly, consciousness is pure, for the spirit soul is pure. But consciousness is changed according to the association of the material qualities. Real consciousness is Krishna consciousness. When, therefore, one is situated in Krishna consciousness, he is in his pure life. But if his consciousness is adulterated by some type of material mentality, in the next life he gets a corresponding body. He does not necessarily get a human body again. He can get the body of a cat, dog, hog, demigod, or one of many forms, for there are 8,400,000 species. Okay, so this was precipitated from our reading of text 21, I believe, in the Srimad Bhagavatam 10:3-21, in which we read, "O my Lord," this is Vasudeva praying to Krishna as he's just appeared in this world, "proprietor of all creation, you have now appeared in my house, desiring to protect this world. I am sure that you will kill all the armies that are moving all over the world under the leadership of politicians who are dressed as Kshatriya rulers, but who are factually demons. They must be killed by you for the protection of the innocent public." And here's Srila Prabhupada's purport. Krishna appears in this world for two purposes: paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chadushkritam, to protect the innocent religious devotees of the Lord and to annihilate all the uneducated, uncultured asuras who unnecessarily bark like dogs and fight among themselves for political power. It is said, Kali Kali Namarupe Krishna Avatar. The Hare Krishna movement is also an incarnation of Krishna in the form of the holy name, Namarupe. Every one of us who is actually afraid of the Asuric rulers and politicians must welcome this incarnation of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Then we will surely be protected from the harassment of Asuric rulers. At the present moment, these rulers are so powerful that by hook or by crook they capture the highest posts in government and harass countless numbers of people on the plea of national security or some emergency. Then again, one Asura defeats another Asura, but the public continues to suffer. Therefore, the entire world is in a precarious condition, and the only hope is this Krishna conscious movement. Lord Nrsingadev appeared when Prahlad was excessively harassed by his Asuric father. Because of such Asuric fathers, that is, the ruling politicians, it is very difficult to press forward the Hare Krishna movement. But because Krishna has now appeared in his holy name through this movement, we can hope that these Asuric fathers will be annihilated and the kingdom of God established all over the world. The entire world is now full of many asuras in the guise of politicians, gurus, sadhus, yogis, and incarnations, and they are misleading the general public away from Krishna consciousness, which can offer true benefit to human society. A point that was also made many thousands of years ago by Socrates, who pointed out that one of the ways in which society is ruined is by improper leadership. And at that time, he had considered the idea of the people collectively electing their leaders to be a dangerous system because of the way in which people naturally can become influenced by wealth, or they can be uneducated and therefore not qualified to choose a leader. Therefore, he was also talking at that time about the importance of training and education so that the people who would be proficient in leadership and be able to lead the people in general, be expert at it and know exactly what to do. Not only that, they would be sagacious. So this verse is a prayer that's being offered by Vasudeva just as Krishna is appearing in the world, and he's noting that one of the purposes for Krishna's advent is to give clearance for the sadhus, or those who actually want to make advancement in spiritual life but who are being oppressed by leaders who are misinformed or worse, actually of demoniac spirit. Now we'll take a few reflections or questions. Yes?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I was just thinking how Prabhupada was so, it seemed like he was there and he saw what's happening in the world today, and he wrote this purport about the rulers and what's happening almost in all country, how people are like misused of their, everything is stripped off because of their, of the rulers' materialism. So I was just thinking how Prabhupada gives a simple solution, because it's not like you start a movement or you do this. We can never overcome their power. But Prabhupada gives the simple way that you just chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and that will help us, give us all protection from these powerful asuric forces.
Yes, of course, he gives various suggestions or ideas in various places. But this is an overarching idea that's important not just in the strategy to benefit the world, but also in our own lives. Speaking about the microcosm of our own life, we may find that we're oppressed by bad rulers. Who might those be? Well, according to the earlier chapters of the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, these various forces of lust, kamadinam katina katita palita durnideshas tesham jata maina karuna natrapa nopashanti utsrijaita mata yarupate samprata labda buddhis tamayata sharanam abhayam mam nyungshvat madasye is a verse, classical verse, about how the devotee is praying that for how long and how many ways have I been oppressed by the bad masters of lust, anger, greed. And I have followed them unquestioningly, and I never got time off. They never said you can have time off. And they never gave me mercy. They've simply oppressed me. Therefore, they're called bad masters. And now he's saying that now I've given up these bad masters, and the way he's doing it, Utsrijaitanata Yarupate Samprata Labdhabhuti. He said, Labdhabhuti, I've gained my intelligence now, and I'm turning to you, Krishna, and I'm saying that now I'm going to serve you exclusively. This is the secret to success, that one turns to Krishna and says that I'm not serving the bad masters anymore, I'm serving you. Nonetheless, one may still feel oppressed by these bad masters, and therefore they have to be tamed, or a stronger word Krishna or Prabhupada uses here, I think he says annihilates of the bad masters. So if one takes to the process of chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, then one can gradually overcome the influence of the bad masters in one's own life. This is important because if one is not able to do this, then how would one expect the world to adjust? And this is a point that is brought up in the first verse of the Upadeshamrita, in which Rupa Goswami says, first verse of Upadeshamrita, give him the microphone, go ahead.
Jiva vegan udarapashta vegan etan vegan yavishita dira sarvamapi mam pritvim sasishyat.
Sarvamapi mam pritvim sasishyat means what? Shishyat means what?
He is called disciple.
What is shishyat? Okay, so and pritivim? It means the world, like all the people in the world. So what does that last line say?
He is qualified to make disciples all over the world.
It actually means everyone becomes that person's disciple, because it's such a rare thing. Vacho vegam manasakroda vegam, jihva vegam udarapasta vegam, etan vegam yo vishaheta dhira. If someone's actually dhira and able to overcome the lower urges of the senses, or the urges of the senses, which are propelled by the lower modes of nature, that person becomes the teacher, the informer of everyone else in the world. That person becomes qualified to accept others as students. That's the qualification. Because without that, it doesn't matter what kind of education one has, one who's still ruled by the lower impulses is not qualified to teach spiritual knowledge. And this is pointed out in the Bhagavatam. Yene ravindaksha vimuktamaninas toyasta bhavada vashudha budhaya aruya krishchena paramparam tata. Last line, please. Patantya donadrita yushmarangraya, which means that if a person doesn't become Krishna conscious, then no matter what kind of imagined liberation or perfection one's attained in this life will be short-lived. One will be forced back into the modes of material nature because one hasn't attained the situation above the influence of the material qualities. And that means that one actually has to develop love for Krishna. Yene ravindaksha vimuktamaninas. Yes, Shraddha, please.
So Maharaj, in the Srimad Bhagavatam 12th canto, the Kali Yuga is described as the age of deterioration, and we can see that even in a short lifespan.
A little more volume is possible, Ramananda.
So in the light of that we are in the age of deterioration where things are going to get bad, then how do we understand statements that Prabhupada makes, like all these asuriks will be killed and the kingdom of God will be established? So
well,
how to
first of all, to clarify, when he's talking about killing, he's talking about killing the demoniac spirit, not physically killing. Although Parashuram did this many years ago, because he had the wherewithal to do so. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu doesn't do that. In fact, it's mentioned that in the incarnation as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he comes with weapons, but his weapons are his beauty and his associates. And they come to kill the demoniac spirit through the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. How is it to be understood that the world could be transformed? Well, how could it not be? The fact is that it's always being transformed one way or the other. And if we trace out the various, for instance, ways in which people group together and form countries, we can see there was a cause. For instance, in America, which has been an interesting experiment for the last 200 plus years, the whole thing started with some people getting together in a room and saying, why don't we try this? They had a few documents to go on, like the Magna Carta, and then they came up with their own document. And they said, let's come up with our own idea about how to run a government. So they thought about it and they wrote it down. And they all signed on to it. In fact, the document's still sitting there in Washington, D.C. in the National Archives. You can go and look at it. Everyone signed it. And it was deliberate. And because of that, and because there was a prevailing idea, which is like a seed, then people were able to enact this experiment called the United States of America. First, there was a sequence of events that took place after the idea had been solidified, and now here we have it. It's holding together for the most part. But the only way it's holding together is because there was some idea and it was agreed upon, there was consensus, and then it was enacted. And if you go throughout history, you'll find that every movement started with some seed idea somewhere that people presented, and then it became manifest in a certain way. So the idea here is that if various movements are now manifest because of such a way of organizing things, why couldn't Krishna consciousness then be established around the world? Theoretically, there's validity to that idea. And this is the missionary bent of the acharyas that let it be spread all over the world. But of course, it comes back to also the ability to do that depends on one's own application. each individual has to become well established in it in order to have effectiveness in making it available to people all over the world. In other words, you can't just spread the idea and then not have the example become the change you want to see in the world. Sorry for the cliche, but it's true. So to whatever degree we want Krishna consciousness to be successful, and it means that we see that the process of Krishna consciousness as it's been passed down has validity because it's the teachings of Krishna. And therefore it provides relief. It's panacea for the suffering that people are undergoing in the material world. And we can systematically propagate it and make it available. I mean, Christianity started at a certain time. Now there's over 2 billion adherents to Christianity, right? And the way in which it started was not at all, at the time, it didn't seem plausible. There was a Roman Empire that would annihilate anyone who took to any other process of worship other than which was going on at the time, some polytheistic process. And when the Jesus movement started, there was a great struggle in the very beginning. Not the least of which was philosophically. There was a group of Christians who felt that Jesus was God in flesh, and other people said, no, he's actually an ordinary human being, but because of following God's laws and becoming virtuous, then he became luminous. And this was a huge fissure within the Jesus movement, which had to be worked out in a large assembly. Constantine was a very powerful king at the time, and he helped to bring together the disparate parties, then to discuss it, and to come up with a synthesis that everybody could agree on so they could actually have a movement. And that was just one amongst many hundreds of different twists and turns that the Jesus movement would take, and then it started to take shape and have influence. It then became the mainstay of the Roman Empire, which seemed impossible at one time. In fact, at one time they were killing all the Christians, and then then it prevailed later on. So how do these things happen? I'm not a historian, but I do see that there are trends in the world, and you can trace them back to an original cause and an intention. So how would it be possible? Like that, in a very general way. Did that help? Okay. Let's take a 4-minute break. Stand up, because it's a good idea to stand up. And please introduce yourselves to somebody that you haven't met yet. And then sit back down again. We'll be back in 4 minutes. Is that okay? Or somebody you haven't seen for a while, but try to find somebody. You get extra points if you meet somebody that you haven't ever met or talked to or formally introduced yourself to. Okay, go ahead. Come back in 4 minutes.
So good to see you.
So good to see you too.
It was really amazing.
Did you come back refreshed and happy?
Oh yeah, very much.
Okay, good.
It was like amazing yatra and amazing. I had a wedding for my cousin, so that was also very nice. I could meet all of my cousins and everyone. So it was very nice and yatra.
Nice. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. We find in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the Adi Lila chapter 13, a description of the advent of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we'd just been reading in the 10th canto about Lord Krishna's appearance in this world. And the idea is that Krishna, who's the one original Supreme Personality of Godhead, has makes multifarious appearances in this world, in the material world. Of course, we already heard the reason that he does that, as he states himself in the Bhagavad Gita, Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chaduskritam dharma samstapanartaya sambhavam yuge yuge. So yuge yuge means millennium after millennium, and then he does so to keep the order of the world, keep things clear so that people can continue to stay on the path of righteousness. And that's what he wants. And this happens at scheduled times. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as we'll be hearing more about, appears in this world for external reasons and for internal reasons. And these are all mentioned in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. In fact, the Mangal Charan, or the opening 13 verses of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, describe, first of all, there's a offering of obeisances, Vande Gurun Isha Bhaktan, Ishan Isha Avatarakam, Tat Prakasham Statas Shakti, Krishna Chaitanya Samjakam. Means that he's offering obeisances to his gurus, and then he offers obeisances, Vande Gurun Isha Bhaktan, Ishan Isha Avatarakam, then to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then he goes on to name the Supreme Lord in the next verse, in which he says about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda, that they appear in the age of Kali like the sun and the moon, as if they've arisen simultaneously on the horizon of Gauda, to wonderfully bestow benediction upon all and to dissipate the darkness of the age. And this is something Prahlad Maharaj mentions in his prayers to Lord Nrsingadev, is your incarnation in this world is always for the good of the world. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then is described as being the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The author, Chaitanya Charitamrita, says there are three features to the Supreme Lord, as is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam itself. And we'll find the mirror image of the philosophy between Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita. So in the Bhagavatam we hear, Vedanti tattva vidas tattvam yaj jnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate. That the Supreme Absolute Truth is Advaya Gyan Tattva. He's one truth. There's nothing separate from the Lord. That's what means absolute truth. However, he manifests in three different features. And as we heard recently from Radhika Raman Prabhu, when he gave his seminar on the Tattva Sandarbha, the hermeneutic method of understanding these three features of the Lord is essential in the philosophy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And as you all probably remember, he presented this tool of a ladder. And on the top of the ladder is Bhagavan. And then the next rung down on the ladder is the Paramatma. And then the lowest rung on the ladder is the Brahman, or the effulgence of the Lord. And the supreme feature is Bhagavan. When he suppresses his features for various purposes, then he'll become known as Paramatma. He's not fully manifest as Bhagavan, as Paramatma, because he has a certain duty to do, or a purpose to fulfill in the material world. And then Brahman. This is basically when all the features are suppressed and you simply have the effulgence left, minus the personality of God. And so they're all emanations from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but according to various purposes. So the author of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita goes on to explain how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is that same Bhagavan, and he has various features. Then he goes into the psychology of the appearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Anarpita charim chirat karanaiva tirna kalau samarpayitum unuto jwala rasam subhakti shriyam. Krishna, after appearing in this world, as we heard, he appeared in the home of Vasudeva and Devaki, thinks that really the people of the world didn't get it. They didn't understand my teachings in the Bhagavad Gita. I said, Sarva Dharman Parityaja. Didn't I say that? Sarva Dharman Parityaja. He thinks that nobody did it. So they don't know how to surrender to me. Because oftentimes we say surrender and people say, well, what does that mean? I'm busy. And also he considers Anarpita Charim Chirat. For a long time I have not given this information about the most intimate aspects of the spiritual world. Yes, people know about Vaikuntha and the majesty of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But as mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto itself, there's a way in which the Lord reveals himself according to the mood of the worshipper. And this is something that comes up at the outset of the Brihat Bhagavatamrita. Uttara, who is interviewing her son, Parikshit, before he's killed by the snake bird. There's a little time after the Bhagavatam is spoken where she gets to talk to him before he leaves the world and asks, what is the essence of Bhagavatam? Or what was said by Shukadeva Goswami? And she intuits that there must be more to the spiritual world than what we've understood so far, because she observes that there's a certain kind of devotee that has such a intimate love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's a very special kind of love and attraction for the Lord. There must be a special place for such persons. And indeed there is, and therefore Parikshit Maharaj describes the circuitous route that is taken by Gopakumar in order to find his way back to that most coveted of all sections of the spiritual world, the Goloka Vrindavan, where Krishna is worshipped in intimate loving relationships by his devotees, in the loving relationship of servitude and in friendship and in parental situation, and also as lover and beloved, which is a very intense kind of love. All of them are very intimate and not known well in this world at all. Therefore, anarpita chirim chirat karana yuvatirna kalau. Therefore, in the age of Kali I'll come and I'll reveal this to the world. That's one of the ways in which we know that Rupa Goswami exclaimed, or one of the reasons he exclaimed, that this is the most magnanimous of all Krishna's incarnations, because he's come to teach what nobody else has ever taught before. And then the author gives us the psychology of the Supreme Personality of Godhead again, and what are his internal reasons why he's coming. So externally, to teach the world the Bhagavad Gita by showing it, through his own example, how to follow it as a devotee. It's his Acharya Lila. But then he also has his own purposes for coming to the world, which is to taste his own sweetness. He notes that, does the author, that the Lord is thinking that my devotees in the spiritual world, in the topmost section of the spiritual world, enjoy more than I do. And this is a travesty, because I'm the supreme enjoyer, so we have a problem here. So how is it that Radharani, when she sees me, she feels more pleasure than I do? Because I'm the object of the devotee's pleasure. And who enjoys more? The object or the person who's observing the object? Which would you rather be? A sugar cube or someone who eats the sugar cube? So the Lord the Lord thinks like that. Of course, in California, people don't take sugar, so he's actually hankering to taste what his devotees taste, especially the topmost of all devotees, Srimati Radharani. There's a way she enjoys his sweetness, the way she enjoys pleasure by seeing him and by serving him. And for these are the internal reasons that he comes. And it just so happens that the time for the incarnation in the age of Kali to appear, the Yuga avatar, who comes for making sure that the Yuga is going properly, it coincided with his desire to appear. Therefore, in this particular Kali Yuga, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Swayam Bhagavan, appears himself, Krishna himself, only he comes in a golden form because he's inspired by the mood of Srimati Radharani. That's his internal reason for coming. So what we get here is this unbelievably fortuitous opportunity. Maybe that's redundant. In which the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because of circumstances, appears himself. Normally, one of the incarnations of the Lord, of Narayan, appears as the Yuga avatar, or even a living entity who's empowered, comes to help out in Kali Yuga. But this time, Krishna himself comes, infused with the mood of Srimati Radharani, and he's doing it himself. So this is the meaning of the advent of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And the circumstances under which he makes his advent in this world are, as I said earlier, very similar to those of the advent of Lord Krishna, in which his devotees appear with him in various places. And some of his intimate associates appear in places outside the Dham. And this also shows the magnanimity of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he wants everyone to get association with the devotees. And therefore they appear in various places. And then they meet him in the middle, in Navadvip and in Jagannath Puri and in Vrindavan and in South India, the various places that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes to after he makes his advent in this world. So there's a whole chapter here that describes the advent of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And the verses start on Adi Lila 13, number 1. I wish the grace of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by whose mercy even one who is fallen can describe the pastimes of the Lord. All glories to Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all glories to Advaita Chandra, all glories to Lord Nityananda Prabhu. All glories to Gadadhar Prabhu, all glories to Srivas Thakur, all glories to Mukunda Prabhu and Vasudev Prabhu, all glories to Haridas Thakur. All glories to Swarup Damodar and Murari Gupta. All these brilliant moons have together dissipated the darkness of this material world. All glories to the moons who are devotees of the principal moon, Lord Chaitanya Chandra. Their bright moonshine illuminates the entire universe. Thus I have spoken the preface of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Now I shall describe Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes in chronological order. First, let me give a synopsis of the Lord's pastimes, then I shall describe them in detail. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, adventing himself in Navadvip, was visible for 48 years, enjoying his pastimes. In the year 1407 of the Shaka era, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, and in the year 1455, he disappeared from this world. For 24 years, Lord Chaitanya lived in the Grahastha Ashrama, always engaging in pastimes of the Hare Krishna movement. What kind of pastimes did he engage in? He engaged in the pastimes of the Hare Krishna movement. What are you all engaged in? You are engaged in the pastimes of the Hare Krishna movement. Yeah, that's a fact. So you're actually fulfilling the reason Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to this world. He really wanted to see everyone all over the world engage in the pastimes of the Hare Krishna movement. So engaging in those pastimes and getting other people to join in the Hare Krishna movement means bringing people to the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So well done. After 24 years, he accepted the renounced order of life sannyas, and he resided for 24 years more at Jagannath Puri. Of these last 24 years, he spent the first 6 continually touring India. Sometimes in South India, sometimes in Bengal, and sometimes in Vrindavan. For the remaining 18 years, he continuously stayed in Jagannath Puri, chanting the nectarian Hare Krishna Mahamantra. He inundated everyone there in a flood of love of Krishna. In the pastimes of his household life are known as the Adi Lila, or the original pastimes. His later pastimes are known as the Madhya Lila or Madho Lila, and Antya Lila, or the middle or final pastimes. All the pastimes enacted by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Adi Lila were recorded in summary by Murari Gupta. His later pastimes, the Madhya Lila and Antya Lila, were recorded in the form of notes by his secretary Swarup Damodar Goswami and kept within a book. It's amazing how important these kinds of writings and documents become as time goes by. Even in our own lives, it's easy to take things for granted, but later on they become more and more valuable. And I'm realizing that more when I was just in Mayapur and had the benefit of the association of many of my god brothers and god sisters. We're not getting any younger, I can tell you that much. Many noticeably older, and some, we're getting daily news, or at least once a week. Somebody else has contracted something, somebody else has passed away, and these things are not going to slow down. According to the actuary tables, 1 a week for the next at least 20 years. So in the course of talking to certain devotees, for instance, in the morning times before some of the meetings that I was going to, I'd sit with various devotees, god brothers, who were, had exclusive knowledge that nobody else has because they were there with Prabhupada and they had heard from him directly. I'd turn on my recording, my iPhone, and record what they had to say, realizing that when they leave, it's going to be up for grabs. What actually happened, who said what, when, and how. And the more that you can catalog the kinds of things that are important for it philosophically and for the administration of the movement and so forth, and be clear on what they are, have an idea of what the Siddhanta is, the better off you'll be, and the better off your execution of your duties in Krishna consciousness will be. And we can see the diaries that came from Murari Gupta and Swarup Damodar. These are so important now to inform us of the life of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And without these, we would have very little knowledge at all of the activities and the moods of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we're very fortunate to have this information that come through intimate associates of the Lord himself, as much as we do from those who were with Prabhupada. For those who weren't here when Prabhupada was here, or even those who were but didn't have the opportunity of being in the same room or in the same car, watching him, seeing him go to various places, hearing the accounts of others is refreshing and enlivening, isn't it? Yes. Mics are beginning to circulate again.
I'm sorry, Prabhu, but this question has been arising in my mind, so I just thought this is a time to ask.
Okay.
But Prabhupada's disciples are they are very few and they are very rare. And maybe in one temple we have a couple of them like that. And I personally feel that when you're not here, it's not the same. It's really hard, honestly, no matter how much we try. But then I was really praying that you come, and it's kind of the anchor to which we can hold on and move on, because they're like, if you read pure devotees, you see them and you can see pure devotees. But not many people are there. So I really fear, what will be our course of action, because I'm not sure if all of us can become that pure like that, because it's a void and it feels like we can't close it with anything. So how can we even exist?
Well, that's why after a leader leaves, there's the sociological kind of process that takes place where there's a disturbance for some time, and then things get normalized, hopefully, again. The idea of the disappearance of a prominent teacher or of the spiritual master, to say more accurately, in the lives of disciples, is called tirobhava. And this is actually, according to our acharyas, a time at which everyone is then tested. Because as everyone knows, you don't always get to keep your teachers and your leaders. At some point, they go away. And then the test starts. What did you actually learn? And amazingly, we're more resilient than we think, in one way. And partly that's due to the fact that Krishna is there within the heart of every living entity and is assisting us in various ways. And that if we're sincere, that, in any situation, Krishna comes to assist us and to guide us. So in the Tirobhava, we have this event where it appears that the teacher, the sadhu, the spiritual master has disappeared. But of course we know that such a person lives on in his or her vani. And we have to take advantage of that. He reasons ill who tells that Vaishnavas die, for Vaishnavas die to live, and while living try to spread the holy name around, because they live still in sound. And therefore those who are internal devotees, they're internals and they're external followers of the guru and the acharya. And so when one is an internal devotee, he or she learns how to follow the vani. And those who are only concerned with the external feature then become more disturbed. So while we're cultivating Krishna consciousness, we have to become very aware of the importance of vani. And Prabhupada stated it even as he was living among us, that what's most important is you develop a relationship with my books and so forth. Of course, we do find a very special kind of quality in those who had personal association with him. At least I do. I notice that those who are personally trained by Prabhupada have a certain acumen for instance, management and assessing the world in a certain way that others don't have. And that's a good thing, because you can see that the touch of the master on such persons. But it doesn't mean that that's exclusive to those who had that experience. One can have an association with those people, and if one is astute and careful and listens and observes and is sincere, then one can also assume those qualities. And I always, we always wondered what will happen after Prabhupada left, and then we find out. I mean, I even thought, what will happen when my parents leave? It was inconceivable to me, like, how will I react to it when my parents die? And then it just happened. And then I had to react and deal with it, because what else are you going to do? And all these things come up in life. So you have to go on doing what you're doing. And when you do, you'll find that actually Krishna is running things ultimately. And if you keep up with what you've understood properly through hearing and association, then he carries what you lack and preserves what you have. Doesn't mean you won't be bummed out though. Okay. Any other thoughts? Yes, Prabhu.
Maharaj, we know that the associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu descended when Mahaprabhu came into this world. So, is there any possibility that some of his associates may also come in the future?
Yes.
To carry on this Krishna conscious movement?
Yes. In fact, that ties into what we were talking about earlier. And that is that when Brahma went to the shore of the ocean of milk and asked for the Lord to appear, Krishna said, I want all my associates, devas, to also appear. Who were those devas? Actually, we may think, oh, they're demigods, but what does that mean? And that's why we went to those verses in the Bhagavad Gita that say that oftentimes people who are practicing Krishna consciousness very sincerely in this world and then don't make it to the final goal, they'll take birth in higher planetary systems. That is to say, in atmospheres where there's piety and even devotion, obviously, because they're continuing there. Then, when the Lord appears in a particular universe, in a particular planet, he asks those people to come and advent at the same time that he does. And this is consistent with what is described as the process for going back to Godhead, and that is that you don't go directly back to Godhead, but you, a devotee who's practicing, will take birth in a universe where the Lord's performing his pastimes, and then you get further trained up. So, from the song of Narottam Das Thakur, Gauranga Dutipada, we learn that not just the associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who were present at the time when he made his advent were Nitya Siddhas, but Prabhupada points out from this song that anyone who's joined into the movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is to be considered, of course, in one purport he says a Nitya Siddha, eternal associate with the Lord. And this makes sense in that this is the advent, as Prabhupada pointed out in the purport of Krishna, the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So you have taken birth in a universe where Krishna is present and performing his pastimes. You're already there. And you're being trained right now to be part of the spiritual world. That's what the Krishna consciousness movement is. And from that position, you'll be able to go back home, back to Godhead, or continue your service in the material world as Krishna wishes. What was his exact question? I forget. The associates will be born in the future. Associates of Lord. Oh yes, and of course, the associates of the Lord, who are you, have been born here in Silicon Valley and other places to help propagate the Krishna conscious movement all over the world. How does that make you feel? Yes, David Vrata Prabhu.
It's really nice to see you, Maharaj.
It's wonderful. When we pulled in and saw your van, we could feel a surge of transcendental energy, because it's from those vans that are going from town to town, village to village, in which you live and breathe the Krishna conscious movement. We get the greatest pleasure and transcendental energy in the Krishna conscious movement. So thank you very much for traversing the earth. Hare Krishna.
You on this topic of Tirobhava, you mentioned that Krishna in the heart, after the disappearance of Guru, he sees the disciple. Is it possible that the Guru can manifest himself through another Vaishnava in order to guide that particular disciple? Because in the prayers of, to the spiritual master, it says, Janme Janme Prabhu Se. So it's master birth after birth. So the Guru can understand the heart of the disciple, so is it possible that he can empower a particular Vaishnava in order to guide that disciple to him?
Yes. There's evidence is in the Srimad Bhagavatam Discourse, when Gopakumar, the hero of the story, appears. It's at the behest of Srimati Radharani, who has observed how she wants to save Brahman from the material world. And this is an orchestrated plan by Srimati Radharani and the Lord to rescue this particular soul. And Krishna makes such arrangements. So in his talk on his spiritual master's appearance day, Srila Prabhupada pointed out in the famous lecture that Guru is one. Because ultimately there's one Guru, it's Krishna. This you'll find in the section of the Matsya Avatar. Prabhupada gives a very pointed purport about who the Guru is. He said the Guru is Krishna, and anybody who represents the Guru or represents Krishna is also called Guru. Now, in the case of Janme Janme Prabhu say, yes, there's a way in which Krishna comes in various manifestations in this world, and the soul can come in various embodiments, or others can be empowered by Krishna, or even by those other devotees to come and help in certain ways. And we find even in this life, or in the Shastra for that matter, the Vande Gurun Isha Bhaktan. This is honoring all the Gurus in their plurality, that there are Vartmana Pradakshaka Guru, there's the Shiksha Guru, the Didiksha Guru, and this, the author gives equal credit to, for helping the soul come back to Godhead, and said these are equal manifestations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, especially the Shiksha and Diksha Guru. He honors even the Vartmana Pradakshaka Guru as a manifestation of Krishna. So they're all working in concert with Krishna to help the living entity come back home, back to Godhead. Often Diksha Gurus will ask their disciple to take help from certain kinds of people, seeing that there's a cooperation among all of them. The idea is everyone working together to save the living entity from the material world. That was kind of answered I answered that in a roundabout way, but I hope you got the idea. Did you? Okay.
Maharaj, I have a question. As in Bhagavatamrita, as you mentioned that there is a discussion about who received the highest mercy. In that context, I have a question. Sometime when we are thankful for whatever we have been given, and like even sitting in the class, we are so lucky that you're back here sitting to you. When we say that this is not a mercy, it's not acknowledging that is denial of what we are already being blessed with. Is a bad thing? Or because when I read through that one, it was like, even you have Pand was telling, if I didn't receive his mercy, then all the exalted personalities there, I don't know what mood they were comparing that, but to me, sometimes I feel whatever I have, if I have a gratitude, I feel whatever God has given me, I'm sitting here right now, this is mercy, I cannot speak and utter anything. Shouldn't I be thankful for that, or should I hope I made it clear.
Karvinda, could you tell me what his question is?
In the Srimad Bhagavatam, many...
Make it like 2 sentences.
Many devotees says, like, whenever they approach by that, I am not so lucky to get all the mercy. The other person is he's more bigger devotee. So Prabhu's question is that they're not grateful for whatever they get, and what was their mood? He could not understand.
I see. Okay. Well, part of this is explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam Discourse in the word dainya. Dainya means utter humility. And this is a very genuine sentiment of a purified soul. The more Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in his teachings to Sanatana Goswami, one becomes purified and advanced in devotional service the more one feels that I'm unqualified, genuinely. And it's not like, no, it's you, it's not me. But it's actually coming from the depths of the soul, feeling unqualified, even though such a person is becoming more and more qualified. And so that natural sentiment is there in all of these devotees, and you'll notice it goes all the way to the top. Once Narada comes to Vrindavan and meets Srimati Radharani and the gopis, you'll find that their mood is the same. No, everyone else is better than me. Why us? And therefore, those who develop an exclusivistic mentality or a separatist mentality where they think like, well, actually, we're the best. Everybody else, they don't know what they're talking about. This is antithetical to the mood of Vrindavan itself, or the topmost devotees, the gopis. So if one thinks, like, only I have the fast track to the spiritual world, this is does not reveal the mentality of an advanced devotee. Although there are ways in which it's important to discuss Siddhanta and describe what is correct and incorrect according to the Shastra, there's also a way in which an advanced devotee sees others as very qualified and him or herself as not being qualified. Did you have a follow-up from that, Devavrata? Okay. And then there's one online right after that. Back to Shraddha.
At what point does this feeling of unqualification, is it an upadi or is it a genuine symptom of...
It depends on whether it's being generated from false ego or whether it's coming from actual spiritual advancement. And you can tell from the symptoms. From those who are simply morbidly depressed about their situation because they're not the center of the world and they're not as perfect as they wish they could have been, which we might put under the category of low self-esteem. Materially, they're on the bodily conception of life, and you'll find that they're not stimulated by that. They actually become less productive, and they become victims. There's a lot about victimology. You can look it up online. There's a mindset that comes with that, and also with low self-esteem. It's disempowering. Whereas the genuine article, which is dainya or utter humility that comes from actual spiritual advancement, is completely enlivening. And you'll find that even as one is experiencing this dainya or utter humility, that one becomes more and more productive spiritually, is able to manage or preach Krishna consciousness in obviously empowered, self-luminous ways. And that you can tell from the symptoms. So if you're wondering in yourself, you can see, am I wallowing in my own lack of self-esteem because of woe is me? Or am I actually feeling humble? And if you're actually really feeling if you're feeling humility, you'll simultaneously feel great enlivenment because it enables you to take deeper and deeper shelter of the holy name as you experience that. Shraddha has one from online.
So this is Shivas Pandit Prabhu.
Our Shivas Pandit?
Yes.
Wow, pretty good.
So he's offering you his obeisances and welcome back.
Thanks. When I was in Mayapur, sorry to interrupt, but I just want to mention to Srivas Pandit Prabhu that I was invited to come to the ceremony in which devotees were being awarded the Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhavam, Bhakti Vedanta. It just happened that our Navina Nirada Prabhu had achieved the Bhakti Vedanta award. And according to the devotees there, it was the first time it had ever been done in their institution. And so I walked in at the right time, talking to me at the right time. They asked me to pass out the Bhaktivedanta Awards. So no, it's not something to applaud for them, but the point is that I'm sending an internal message to Srivas Pandit. It's tacit. Go ahead. He knows what I'm talking about. All right.
Thank you for your wonderful class. There's a question. In the modern ISKCON context, how much respect should the Siksha and Diksha gurus be given? Both should be equally respected? And also he sent a haha for the internal message.
He said haha? Okay, good. Well, who is more important? The person who gives you the seed or plants it, or the person who waters it? Please answer that. Both? So equally. It should be known. And the culture of Gaudiya Vaishnavism means actually learning how to respect Guru and see that Guru is a representation of Krishna. The more one's able to do that, to not only respect one's own Guru, but others, the Gurus of others, and to learn the etiquette of how to exalt those who are bringing the message of Krishna to others or bringing the mantra to others, is actually the real culture of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And you'll find it throughout the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Chaitanya Charitamrita. For instance, in the Beta Kirtan pastimes, when Maharaj Pratapuruja goes to the roof to see the devotees coming in to Jagannath Puri from Navadvip, and Gopinath Acharya is explaining this person, that is, and then Maharaj Pratapuruja, who are these effulgent people? And he notices that, certain people get more honor than others. The gurus are mentioned there, that they're being honored in a certain way as part of the etiquette. And those who understand the etiquette of doing this as being essential for the life of the community of devotees actually understand Gaudiya Vaishnavism. This is a very important point. Those who glorify Guru. Of course, behind closed doors, God brothers, somebody may be a guru, there can be conversation there that is very, down to earth, and even questioning, what were you talking about? But that goes on behind closed doors. Otherwise, the flow of faith and mercy may be disturbed, and that's one part of the etiquette, that one has to be very careful to preserve the relationships between gurus. And which is more important, the guru, Shiksha Guru or Diksha Guru? It really has to do with the individual. It's not an institutional consideration, although all gurus are worshipped as manifestations of Krishna to the degree that they are, and not because they're named in a certain way, but because of the way in which they're manifesting Krishna. That's what makes them gurus in the first place. Gurus are self-effulgent. It's not an institutional post, but it's actually something that comes from somebody becoming actually Krishna conscious and then manifesting that Krishna consciousness to others, and then they say, oh, there's my teacher. The guru never thinks I'm a guru or I'm a teacher. Somebody who does is disqualified. An actual teacher is somebody who's humble. Amanidvam adamvidvam, and then thinks, these people are more qualified than I am. However, I've been put in this position by them. In fact, there's an old saying that the disciple is captured by shiksha, and the guru is captured by diksha. Do you get it? Anybody? Who gets it? You want to explain it?
So he was saying that the disciple is captured by shiksha and the guru is captured by diksha.
What does it mean?
So it means that when the spiritual master is giving instruction to the disciple and guiding them, he's capturing the heart of the disciple. And in the formal process of accepting Diksha and surrendering to the spiritual master, the disciple is...
Yeah, put it in common terms. You know, the person who's listening suddenly goes, oh my God, this is my teacher. You know, I have to follow this person. I'm going to have to surrender. And that's what actually awakens when one's in a real relationship with a bona fide teacher. Is go like, this is the truth. You know, I'm going to have to act on this. Then that person will approach, you know, such a teacher and say, you know, I'm surrendering to you. You got to take care of me for eternity. So that person gets captured by Diksha. It's like, and wait a minute, I don't know. You know, it's like, no, I'm only following you. You don't understand. I have to follow you now. And then they're captured. So there's this, you know, that's a natural course of events that takes place, this capturing process. Were we done with the online? Yeah, answered that. Okay.
So in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that everybody who is born, especially in India, should become guru or spiritual master. But you just mentioned that one should not aspire or think that one should become guru or I am guru. So what is the mood in which we should...
That mood is best exhibited in the speech that was given by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur on his Vyasa Puja Day. It's a profound speech which everyone should study. And he then brings this point up. He says, here I am sitting on a seat in front of all the other Vaishnavas, and I'm accepting their gifts, I'm accepting their praise and so forth. He said, what am I? The biggest animal in the zoo garden here on display? What am I, some kind of beast that I'm to sit here in front of everybody else in an exalted seat and accept this kind of praise? Then he goes on to say, but Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was given this order that everyone step up to this position. And some may say, you cannot take such a position. This is antithetical to the principle of humility. But then he said, actual humility means to follow the order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that despite the fact that it's uncomfortable or that it may be unseemly to do such a thing, I am determined that no matter what anybody says, I'm going to follow the order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and I'm going to step up. So that's a conundrum. And again, one may be captured in that position, not just by the disciple, but by the order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that I have to do this. It becomes evident that in order to offer all the things that I'm saying I'm offering in the store, that I also have to offer people the position of, play the role of guru in their life, like a parent. And that's what Prabhupada describes. He said children need parents in order to survive and also to develop psychologically. And if they don't have parents, then it becomes a lot more difficult or impossible. So in a similar way, spiritual practitioners also have to have the spiritual master. It's like a parent, and to help raise them in Krishna consciousness. So anyway, we came together for this assembly, and we read some Shastra, which I found extremely edifying, hearing the Bhagavad Gita and the various verses that you brought up for consideration and the realizations the devotees had. We chanted a little bit in the beginning. We had a break. Everyone got to meet somebody new, right? And now we've come to the point of Guru Puja. So we're going to put away all the asanas, stand up, we'll have some chanting, and after that we'll have Krishna Prasadam, not just for everyone here, but for everyone in Silicon Valley. So you can put out the word that we'll feed anyone and everyone, even if it's 10,000, 20,000 people. If you're listening online, come on down here. We'll feed you. The kitchen's open 24 hours. Thank you very much. Gaur Premanande Haribam. Vanchakalpadrubhisha Kripasindabe Vacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. And thank you